Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is normally the part of the program where I do the weekly news roundup, but I don't have a news roundup for you tonight because there is only one news story that matters this week. It may wind up being the most important news story of this decade. In fact, future historians may well record that the murder of Charlie Kirk on the campus of Utah Valley University on the afternoon of Wednesday, 10 September 2025, was the most consequential political assassination of a non-president in all of American history. I did a video about it on Thursday, and I've written about it at some length since then, and I don't really have much to say on the matter that wouldn't be a repetition of a thing I have already said or written, either on video or in print. So in addition to not having prepared a news roundup, I also haven't composed any sort of dedicated monologue to read for you right now, but I am going to read some excerpts from things that I've written in the past 2 or 3 days, which I haven't attempted to collate into any sort of coherent order, so it will probably sound more disjointed than the things I normally read on camera for public consumption, but it will probably, hopefully in some way, add up to a fitting snapshot of my thoughts as I have thought them over the last 48 to 72 hours. On the difference between the American left and the American right, I wrote the following. What's the difference between the left and the right? When an anonymous career criminal drug addict expires from an overdose while in police custody, the left spends half a year burning and looting the entire continent. The Democrat Party and the fake news media cheer them on all the way. When a prominent conservative commentator, a good and decent young man, gets publicly killed in broad daylight in front of his wife and kids, the right doesn't burn anything, doesn't loot anything, doesn't break anything, doesn't harm anyone. They hold prayer vigils, they express sympathies and condolences, and they collect the receipts on the vile, cretinous monsters who are celebrating the evil act. And the Democrat Party and the fake news media, right on cue, they bloviate about right-wing violence. Never have they done such a splendid job of showing us exactly who they are. On the all too predictable but no less regrettable reactions of elected Democrats across the country, I said this. All the channels, all the outlets, all the hours of airtime, and the Democrats can't come up with one person who is willing to say something non-ghoulish. They can't come up with one person who is willing to say it's a terrible thing that happened and just leave it at that. They can't come up with one person who cares more about the human tragedy than they do about crafting a self-serving narrative and engaging in political ass covering. 3 days ago, the Democrats already looked like just about the worst people in the world, and they look much, much worse today. On Matthew Dowd, the vile, ghoulish creature who got fired from MSNBC correctly and still amazingly wants to portray himself as the real victim, and who said these words in his non-apology apology, quote, "I am getting over the shell shock of the past few days and will turn my gaze on adventures and the journey ahead," end quote. About that, I wrote the following. Shell shock. This little slimy bastard actually uses a combat metaphor to describe his very well-deserved loss of employment for saying things that were so calumnious and so utterly indefensible that not even MSNBC, the mother of all fake news sludge factories, could justify keeping him on the payroll. This man should never have a job anywhere ever again. He shouldn't be hired to manage a Dairy Queen. He shouldn't be hired to shovel horse shit at the county fair. He should be ostracized from all sectors of society for the remainder of his days. On false moral equivalencies, of which we have had no shortage from all the usual suspects these past few days, I said this. We don't have a both sides problem. We don't have a turn down the temperature problem. We don't have a divisive rhetoric problem. We don't have a lack of unity problem. We have a problem with left-wing radicalization and left-wing violence. Their dumb fallacies and their dumb false equivalencies were already meaningless before, and they are even more meaningless now. We will no longer give serious rebuttal to any of that crap because it brooks no serious rebuttal. The problem exists on their side only. The onus is on them alone to acknowledge it and to rectify it. All we can do at this point as normal, decent people is to watch our six and keep our powder dry. On the shifting of the Overton window, I wrote the following. I have watched a lot of Charlie's Prove Me Wrong events on various college and university campuses, and I have always been struck by the crowds they attract. Not so much the jello-colored hair and the javelins in their faces and the god-awful tattoos, but the looks in their eyes and their physical mannerisms each and every time I felt as if I was looking at people who were animated solely by hatred and malevolence. They always looked, and the girls more so than the boys, like if Charlie's security detail were to walk away, they would kill him with their bare hands immediately. They would tear him limb from limb and bathe in his blood. But 10 or 15 years ago, would any of Charlie's views have been regarded as extreme, or even noteworthy, or even particularly conservative? Would they have drawn crowds of pitchfork-wielding lunatics, screaming the most vicious abuse that can be imagined? Would they have drawn any crowds at all? Nah, probably not. 10 or 15 years ago, Charlie's views were simply the things that most normal people thought. We would all do well to think long and hard about how and why our centers of higher learning turned into industrial terrorism factories, and how and why it happened so quickly. On a related note, on the mechanisms whereby the places we used to call college campuses are now fully fledged terrorist madrasas, I said this. Charlie's alleged killer was, by all available accounts, a perfectly normal kid when he finished high school. Then he went off to college. And somehow, someway, 4 years later, he was an Antifa assassin. Does anyone actually believe there is no causal relationship there? It's well past time to stop tiptoeing around the fact that the places we used to call centers of higher learning are now terrorist factories. Each time the Chi-Coms give an 8-figure endowment to an American college or university, when they give $80 million to Harvard here and $60 million to Columbia there and $20 million to your local state college, whatever else it might be, what do you suppose they think they're purchasing? Because they ain't giving that money to warm the philanthropic cockles of their Chi-Com hearts, I can tell you that, and they sure as hell are not giving it to promote the teaching of national unity and traditional American values. That is for goddamn sure. They are buying social destabilization. They are rotting our society from the inside, and we have been happily letting them do it for the last 30 years. And boy, oh boy, have they got their money's worth. Imagine how hard the Chi-Coms would laugh at us if our government tried to pump their colleges full of money for the teaching of anti-communism. They would not allow us to spend a single red cent in that endeavor, no pun intended. But China is a serious country. We, regrettably, are not a serious country. On the words of the execrable, revolting NPR host Brittany Luce, who opened her show with a monologue all about how Charlie totally deserved it because he said words she doesn't like, I wrote the following. This is one big, long, mealy-mouthed justification for murder. It is vile. It is revolting. The cretin who said it should be fired immediately. Charlie was not an extreme conservative. He never said any bigoted things. Only a few years ago, none of his views would have been regarded as controversial or even noteworthy. 10 or 15 years ago, even 20, if you went to a college campus, set up a tent and a couple of speakers and said, I don't think men can magically turn themselves into women, would it have attracted a crowd of murderous savages who think you ought to be killed? Would it have attracted any crowd at all? The answers very likely are no and no. On the Secret Service agent who was placed on administrative leave for celebrating the assassination on social media, I said this. I wish I could say I have total trust in the Secret Service, but I can't. This guy isn't the only agent who thinks these horrendous things. He is just the only one who was stupid enough to say it in public. We do not need an Indira Gandhi incident in the United States, and that's what I can't help worrying about. That's what I can't help fearing that we are hurtling toward. They failed to get Trump at an outdoor public gathering. The next escalation is to try and get him from the inside. If the entire Secret Service was stood down, I would not call it an overreaction. We already know that lots and lots of incompetent DEI hires were brought into the Secret Service during the Obama regime, and we would be badly deluding ourselves to believe this agent is the only one who thinks it is okay to assassinate conservatives. The whole agency should be stood down immediately, and the job transferred to the Marines or the Marshals or I don't know who, until every potential inside assassin has been weeded out. Not to belabor the point, but we really, really don't need an Indira Gandhi incident. And that's what I fear is on the horizon. On all the people, idiots I believe they're called, who are shocked and outraged to have been fired from their jobs for cheering the fact that a young man got fatally shot in front of his wife and kids, I wrote the following. These people are such damned fools. They think they can say absolutely anything they want without any personal or professional consequences redounding upon them. They think free speech is a one-way street that only goes in their preferred direction. They think if they are cloistered in their woke safe space with other like-minded maniacs, they can say any vile, vicious, inhuman thing they want with total impunity. Each one of them deserves to be suddenly and totally disabused of that wildly mistaken notion. On leftist delusions of moral and intellectual superiority, I wrote the following. If you're confident in your ability to win the argument on a level playing field in an open marketplace of ideas, if you're confident that you are on the right side of history, if you're truly assured of the moral rectitude of your point of view, then you have no need to wish for the death of your interlocutor, nor any inclination to celebrate it when it happens. What's the difference between the right and the left? That is. And I'll close with this one, which is just about as positive and uplifting as I can get this week, on a little bit of inspiration that I took from Charlie's example yesterday morning. I posted a short video on YouTube a while ago, a clip from my Thursday video about how decent people ought to divest themselves from companies that advertise on MSNBC and CNN. And as often happens, some woke commenter immediately tried to jump down my throat, saying the sort of vile, hateful, irrational things that they always say. And before I wrote back what I was going to write back, I stopped myself. And I thought, what would Charlie do? And I know exactly what Charlie would have done. He would have attempted to engage the person with a respect they had not shown him, with a grace they had not shown him, and with a desire for understanding that they had not shown him. So that's the example I decided to follow. And me and the Wokester wound up cordially wishing each other a pleasant weekend. Thanks, Charlie. You are our better angels. I'm done. That's just about all I've got for you. Thank you for indulging me with your kind attention. And here is the distinguished Mr. Sasquatch.